Hey guys, you're watching Miles Per Hour, and today's video is going to be about why I got my GT3 RS. Alright, so I want to talk a little bit more about why I got a GT3 RS. As a lot of you are probably aware, there are a ton of different vehicles that you can purchase in this price range, and you may also know, or you may not know, that I had a Performance Model 3 before. So this is quite the change from a fully electric vehicle. You know, I'm now getting 12 mpg, have a flat 6, and track toy basically. So I actually ended up getting the GT3 RS because I was really interested in Porsche vehicles, the 911, with its heritage. I originally wanted a GT3 actually, do the 9,000 RPM red line, and I didn't really think an RS was an attainable vehicle initially. So I started researching into GT3 allocations. I really wanted to have a car that I could take to the track, a car that I could drive hard in the canyons, and one that I think looks really good. So I was looking at GT3s, I was trying to get allocations. I found that to be nearly impossible for someone who's never owned a Porsche vehicle before. Dealers weren't really willing to work with me. They said I'd be a couple years out at least, and I probably wouldn't even be paying MSRP at that point. So, highly optioned GT3s are 160 to 180. The cars start about 145, and you start adding bucket seats and, different options on the car, you get up into that 160, 180 range. And then someone was like, oh, why don't you get an RS? And I was like, well, come on. If a GT3 is this much, an RS is going to be even more. So I found out that 2016 RSs were in the GT3 price range. They ranged from 169 to low twos. And then, I thought, no way. Like my current vehicle, it's 78,000. I can't go and buy a car. It's nearly $200,000. It just doesn't make sense. But when you start looking at the RS and how it's a limited edition vehicle that really does not depreciate heavily, it starts making more sense. You have a large initial investment. You have to put up a lot of capital initially to get the vehicle. But when you start looking at things like resale value, it makes this car a lot cheaper. This is not like going out and buying a $200,000 Mercedes S-Class, an S65 AMG. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there's videos out there of those cars being worth 2% of their original MSRP after, 10, 11, 12 years. That kind of made the RS a lot more attractive for me. I was looking at historical resale values. 2007s and 2010s and 2011s are still going for $130,000, $140,000 with 20 to 40,000 miles on it. Yeah, that kind of, I guess you could say, sold me on the RS, and then I had quite a journey getting financing for this car because I did not pay cash for it. So I'll make another video in the future talking about how to get financing on a supercar, especially for a young person. I'm only 21 years old. Talk a little bit about some of the other vehicles that I could have purchased or that I was kind of looking at in a similar price range. One of the top other vehicles, I guess I could say, for me was the McLaren 570S. So if you look at those cars used, so they're going for about 150 to 200, getting a McLaren 570S, depending on if you want a Spider, how many miles, and what year. And that's a really attractive vehicle. McLaren 570S is a real supercar. A lot of people maybe don't consider the GT3 RS a supercar because at the end of the day, it's still a 911. But a McLaren 570S, the doors go up, you've got a twin turbo V8, dual clutch transmission, which this also has. But it's just got a little bit more of a supercar vibe, the 570S. So I was looking at that vehicle heavily. But one of the reasons I kind of shied away from that was, one, due to the depreciation. If you look at MP412Cs, they're going in the $90,000 range now, and those cars aren't very old. Also, the repair costs on McLaren vehicles. I've been watching Hoovie's Garage. I've seen Rob Ferretti, Super Speeder Rob, and that's kind of scary. I don't want to have to shell out $30,000 for a steering rack or any of the other number of things that seem to go wrong all the time on McLarens, especially considering I could not find a CPO McLaren 570S. I'm sure they exist, but I wasn't able to find one that was in a reasonable price range that was comparable to the RS. One of the other cars I was comparing this to was the Ferrari 458. 2011 and 2012 458s are getting down in price. They're sub 200 now. I think they've actually kind of been there for a while. But I ultimately decided against getting, one of the best naturally aspirated Ferrari V8s due to, once again, the lack of a warranty. So that's really important to me as I get into this type of car. I'm unfamiliar with cars in this price range. You know, I've been following them for a long time. I know a lot about them, but I've never actually owned one. So going into my ownership experience, I really wanted to have a reliable car. And I feel like the RS really fits the bill there, because at the end of the day, you know, like I said, when maybe some people don't see it as a supercar, maybe this is why. It's still a Porsche. They're still reliable cars. You know, this has an engine derived from motorsport. It's a CPO, so I have a warranty for another 2.5 years with unlimited miles on it. So if anything major goes wrong in the car, I really don't have to worry about it. I'm just going to take it to the Porsche dealership. They're going to fix it for free. They're going to give me a loaner car, and I'm going to be on my way. So I guess what ultimately came down for me on the RS was, one, resale value. This car really should not lose me a ton of money like a McLaren would, and it's going to be the warranty. The thing I wanted to talk about was the performance of this vehicle versus the other options like the 570S and the 458. So, you know, this is a flat six. It's naturally aspirated, which also was a part of the decision for me. I really wanted to have a high revving, naturally aspirated engine again. But the RS has been V-boxed going 0 to 60, you know, 2.78 seconds. McLaren 570S has a similar 0 to 60 time. McLaren 570S also has, I believe, a higher top speed. This car is around 193. Don't quote me exactly on that figure. But this car is going to eat a 570S in the canyons. You know, the aero on this vehicle and just the way that Porsche set up the suspension, it's going to demolish a 570S in the canyons, and the acceleration figures are pretty similar. The 458, it's a much slower vehicle. So the 458 has a similar 0 to 60 to my last car, which was a performance Tesla Model 3, somewhere in the 3-second range, you know, 3.1, 3.2, maybe even 3.5. And the 458, I believe, is going to be slower in a straight line and in the canyons, in the corners. So, you know, it's older technology. It does have the naturally aspirated V8 going for it, which would definitely be a plus. But ultimately for me, the RS had that combination of acceleration and handling, along with the naturally aspirated flat six and the high red line.